Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Jaya Vijana Vallabha Girivarathari Govijana Vallabha Girivarathari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Govijana Vallabha Girivarathari Govijana Vallabha Girivarathari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundra Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashto Tarasata Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Save the whole world Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashto Tarasata Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind Ki Namacharya Shaharidas Thakur Ki Premsaka Ho Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhara Śrī Hari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Śrī Śrī Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Braj Bhumi Shivindama Dama Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dama Ki Purushtam Chetra Janapuri Dama Ki Ganga Mai Ki, Jamuna Mai Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Tulasi Maharani Ki, Samaveta Bhakti Brindi Ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glorious devotees, all glorious devotees, all glorious devotees, all glorious, Lord of Feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glorious to Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, text number 9. Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Dvaipāyana-suhṛt-sakhā. 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 Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Dvaipāyana-suhṛt-sakhā. Lokān anucaran siddha. Lokān anucaran siddha. Lokān anucaran siddha. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. Lokān anucaran siddha. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Dvaipāyana-suhṛt-sakhā. Lokān anucaran siddha. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. Tasmin mahā-bhāgavato. Dvaipāyana-suhṛt-sakhā. Lokān anucaran siddha. Āsasāda yadṛcchayā. tasmin, then mahā-bhāgavato, a great devotee of the Lord. Dvaipāyana of Kṛṣṇa-dvaipāyana Vyāsa. Suhṛt, a well-wisher. Sakhā, a friend. Lokān, the three worlds. Anucaran, traveling. Siddhe, in that ashram. Āsasāda, arrived. Yadṛcchayā, by his own perfect accord. Translation. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Kṛṣṇa-dvaipāyana Vyāsa, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Responsively, please. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord, and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Kṛṣṇa-dvaipāyana Vyāsa, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Srila Prabhupada's Purport. Maitreya was one of the disciples of Maharṣi Parāśara, the father of Vyāsadeva. Thus Vyāsadeva and Maitreya were friends and mutual well-wishers. By some fortunate accident, Maitreya reached the place where Lord Kṛṣṇa was resting. To meet the Lord is not an ordinary incident. Maitreya was a great sage and a learned scholar-philosopher, but not a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his meeting with the Lord at that time may have been due to ajñāta-sukṛti, or some unknown devotional service. Pure devotees always engage in pure devotional activities, and therefore their meeting with the Lord is natural. But when those who are not up to that standard meet the Lord, it is due to the unforeseen fortune of accidental devotional service. Tasmin Shri Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Srimad. So, in this verse, it continues the story of how Vidura is receiving instructions that ultimately were imparted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, we know that at this time, Uddhava was there and also Maitreya Muni was there. And even though Maitreya was senior by age, still Kṛṣṇa was directly addressing Uddhava. And Prabhupada's giving the hint of this here in this purport is because Uddhava was a pure unalloyed devotee of the Lord, whereas Maitreya Rishi, even though he was a greatly qualified personality, he wasn't a pure devotee. And we see, like Maitreya Rishi, he was involved in quite a few different happenings at this, in that era. He was present at Yudhishthira's Rajasuya Yagya. Also, sometimes when Kṛṣṇa would go visiting different parts of the world, he would also accompany Kṛṣṇa. At one point, he had gone to the Kaurava court to request Duryodhana to have a favorable disposition towards the Pandavas. And while Maitreya was speaking, then Duryodhana, he's kind of impatiently tapping himself on the thigh, and then Maitreya got annoyed with him, because of his impudence, and he cursed him. He said, "Bhima will break that thigh." So he's quite a prominent player at this time. Yet still, even though he had the association of Kṛṣṇa, and he had the association of various great souls, and he himself was a great soul, as Prabhupada states here, he wasn't a pure devotee. And this is the difference between the two. And we see with devotees like Uddhava, for instance, from birth, basically, a great soul. If we look earlier on, I think it's probably the second chapter in this canto, there's a description given there of his childhood, and how, as a child, he would Prabhupada uses the terminology play with dolls, but you can see by the way he was engaging in the activity. It wasn't doll play like we see in this day and age. I remember some years ago, I was talking to a young girl who had a Lord Gopal deity, and I was just trying to encourage her. So I was asking her about her interactions with the deities, and she was telling me the service she was doing every day and things like that. And at one point she said to me, "But sometimes he's very naughty." And I said, "What do you mean by naughty?" "Oh, he likes to play in the mud." So I could see, the way that she was interacting with the deity wasn't, of the same caliber as what we see with devotees like Uddhava, Pariksit, Vidura, these great souls. You can see, and Prabhupada makes a comment in the second canto, and it's really interesting. He says, in the early life of all these great souls, there's symmetry. And we see, he gives the example of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He also gives the example of himself, Mirabai, and also Vidura, Uddhava, and Pariksit. And we see in the lives of these great souls, especially in their early lives, they're completely, not that it changes, but the point I'm making here is that the activities, the practices that they take up as children is quite similar. They follow their elders, they follow their family members in that they're they're engaged in some type of worship. We see Pariksit, he followed his family members. We see the same with Vidura and also with Uddhava. And it describes in the second chapter of this canto how Uddhava, even when his mother would call him to go to take his meal, he said, "Oh, I can't come now, the deity offering's going on." So he wouldn't, even by bodily needs, he wouldn't be distracted in his worship. And we see that this consciousness of being completely focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead continues throughout his life. And we see this is the same with all these great souls. You look at Prabhupada's own example, you look at the example of Pariksit. His whole life he was just constantly absorbed in service to Krishna. Vidura was the same. And also we see this conversation that's about to take place here. It leads, it takes us through the third canto and also into the fourth canto. And we see in the fourth canto, there's the exemplary example of Dhruva Maharaj, who again, as a young boy, he was instructed to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he did. He went to the forest, and there's wonderful instructions there in the fourth canto about his devotional service. And also, he too pursued similar activities to these other young devotees, and then later on in his life, became very fixed in consciousness, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see there's the similar, as Prabhupada uses the term, the symmetry in their lives. And we can see also Prabhupada's giving this contrast here between, someone like Maitreya, who's a great rishi, a great sage, and obviously a very, very advanced devotee, but he's not pure in his bhakti. Exactly what Prabhupada means by not pure, I don't know, but obviously there must be some trace of material conditioning there to some extent. It may be very small, but he's saying he's not a pure devotee, because as we know, and we'll see this comes out in the 11th canto. Essentially, most of the 11th canto, I think there's 31 chapters there, and I think 23 of the chapters are Krishna's instructions to Uddhava. And the essence of where he goes with those instructions is to guide Uddhava to the stage of pure unalloyed devotion. And already he's at that point, but he's guiding him further. So he's very clear in his consciousness what pure unalloyed devotion is. But also, it's kind of interesting because one of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comments there, he reveals what Krishna is reflecting at the time, how Krishna was thinking, I've been on the planet for 125 years and my time has been completely filled up with various pastimes. I've gone down to the lower planets. I've bestowed mercy on Bali and all the, I went and saw Yamaraj to get back the son of my guru, and all these different places. He went to the higher planets, and went and saw to see Indra, and he had pastimes with the residents of Vrindavan, the residents of Dwarka and Mathura, and so many different places. Yet still, I didn't get to go to Bhadrakashram to see Narayan. And Narayan and the sages there, they're very eager to see me, and they're very eager to hear my instructions. But Uddhava, he's my pure devotee. He's almost as good as me, so he can take the message. So this is partially what Krishna was doing, is he was instructing Uddhava in the process of pure devotional service and how to overcome the influence of this material world, how to give up all attachments in the material world and to become completely attached to Krishna. And then he instructed him, go to Bhadrakashram, because you'll achieve your perfection there. But really, it seemed, from the comments of the acharyas, it really seems that Krishna's purpose was that because Narayan and the other great sages there, the great pure devotees there, would not get Krishna's direct association, so he gave them the association of his pure unalloyed devotee, and in that way they got the same benefit. And there's an interesting verse in the excuse me, in the 9th canto, where Krishna explains, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact translation, but that the pure devotees in my heart, I am their heart. They know nothing but me, and I know nothing but them. And so in this verse, we can see how Krishna is explaining the nature of his pure unalloyed devotee. In essence, there's no difference between the pure devotee of Krishna and Krishna himself. Of course, Krishna is Krishna, and there's no comparison to Krishna, but still, by the association of the pure devotee, one can get Krishna. One can experience Krishna through the association of pure devotee. And this is why the association of devotees is so important, is because through the association of devotees, it's just sadhu sangha, shava shastra koi, lava matra sadhu sangha, savi siddha koi. That is the verdict of all the revealed scriptures, that even by a moment's association with pure devotee, one can achieve all success. Because the pure devotee carries Krishna in their heart. And this, just like there's a really interesting description of I think it's the 12th chapter of the 4th canto, how when the Vaikuntha airplanes come to take Dhruva back to the spiritual world, and as he's just about to step onto the Vaikuntha airplane, his body transforms from material body to a transcendental body, and he becomes golden and effulgent. And it's described there how Krishna's within his heart, and this is the situation. And all of us to some extent, carry, because Krishna's situated there in the heart. But for someone who's a pure unalloyed devotee of the Lord, that's fully shining. And also in the story of Dhruva Maharaj, when he, I think it's about the 8th chapter or something, when he comes back into the kingdom of Uttanapad, when he comes back into the city, because it's really interesting, because in the beginning of the story, we see that his father and his stepmother were very dismissive of him, and actually his stepmother was actually quite offensive to him. Yet when he came back into the kingdom, because he'd been transformed by the process of bhakti, he become completely purified by the process of bhakti, they completely changed in their disposition towards him. And Prabhupada explains there in the Purport how this is the nature of a pure devotee of Krishna, is that people are just naturally attracted. And we see that, with Uttanapad, he was crying tears of joy, cold tears. Prabhupada, it was described there in the verse how his tears were cold, because he was so happy that his son, who he thought had perished, had come back to the kingdom, and he felt that he didn't deserve such a benediction, or that because of the way he treated Dhruva, that he shouldn't have this good fortune in his life. And then for Suruchi, she actually gave benedictions to Dhruva. May you live long, you know. And so we see how the process of bhakti not only transforms our heart, but it transforms the heart of everyone else. And this is the transcendental and actually inconceivable nature of the process of bhakti. You know, we cannot, you know, because we look at the, you know, I mean, there's so many devotees who have come to devotional service. I even look at my own self. I look at the background I came from, and you know, drug addiction, whatever, and you know, through the process of bhakti, these things are just completely given up. No interest in these things at all. And this is the power of bhakti, because through the power of bhakti, we come into contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all these anarthas, all these conditionings are purified from the heart. Sometimes it takes more time, sometimes it takes less time, but through the process of bhakti, it's so powerful that all these previous material desires, these previous contaminations become washed from the heart, and one's becomes restored to their original pure identity, as it describes in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. And primarily, we understand this is through the process of hearing and chanting. This is how one achieves. You know, the 9 processes of devotional service are all very, very effective, but Srila Prabhupada, and we see also with Lord Chaitanya, they tended to put this emphasis on the process of hearing and chanting. And through this process, one's heart becomes purified, and we see the more one becomes purified, the more evident the presence of Kṛṣṇa becomes within the heart, until it comes to the point where one's completely purified, and they actually become to this point of being, you know, a transparent representative of Kṛṣṇa. And they're able to give, there's that song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I think it's that song Gurudev, where he says, Kṛṣṇa is yours, you have the power to give him, please give him to me. You know, so we see through the potency of the process of devotional service, these great souls, they're able to give Kṛṣṇa to others. And we see, this is my understanding of why Kṛṣṇa was deputing Uddhava. And even it's seen that when Uddhava went to Vrindavan, some of the residents of Vrindavan actually mistook him for Kṛṣṇa because he had the same external appearance. The color of his skin was the same. He had the same beautiful features. Of course, there were some differences, but you know, he was very, very beautiful. And even from a very, very young age, he was so attractive. This is described in the beginning of the 3rd canto here, how beautiful he was. And so, you know, some devotees actually mistook him for being Kṛṣṇa, but when they came closer, they could actually see, oh, this is Uddhava. And so, when he went to, and he was actually considered, we see in the later on in the Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, how Kṛṣṇa is describing him as the best of his devotees, especially those devotees who are in this Aishvarya Ras. You know, because he's very much in this aura of reverence, whereas we see the residents of Vrindavan, their relationship was quite different. But nonetheless, he was a pure unalloyed devotee. And we'll see what's going to happen here as this story evolves is I can't remember, I think it's already happened to maybe in a few verses previously, where when he heard that Kṛṣṇa was winding up his pastimes, that he'd advised the Yarus to go to Prabhascetra because of the curse of the Brahmanas, and the dynasty was going to perish, and I think he mentioned it was a week later that his city, Dwarka, would go into the sea, etc. So then Uddhava understood what Kṛṣṇa was saying. And he understood that Kṛṣṇa was about to wind up his earthly pastimes. So as a result, he became very, very overwhelmed by these feelings of grief and separation, because, you know, for him, Kṛṣṇa was everything. It was his life, and the idea of losing Kṛṣṇa was more than he could bear. And we've all had experiences of grief and loss and separation. I was reflecting on this yesterday, and just thinking, you know. Most of my relatives have died, you know, and I think many of us who are getting in our 60s and 70s have gone through that kind of experience. And some you kind of, you know, it's almost like good riddance sort of thing, but others you kind of feel a lot of separation. And sometimes the separation can be quite delayed. And I think, you know, we all experience these things differently and to varying degrees. But we see with Uddhava, I mean, I can't conceive of the separation he must have been feeling, because of, like, it's not like some, you know, he's losing a connection with some material body. You know, someone who's subject to birth, old age, and disease, and someone who's you know, subject to the 4 defects and things like that. It's not like it's that sort of relationship, but he's losing that, you know, personal connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The person who's the summum bonum, the person who from everything expands. And Uddhava's relationship with Kṛṣṇa was so tight. It was so close. I mean, and even Kṛṣṇa, and this is one of the things that Uddhava reflects on. It's like, you know, when he goes to Kṛṣṇa in the forest, he says, you know, you are the Supreme Person of God. You created the universe. You will know of everything. But as if bewildered, you come to me and ask me questions. And we see a similar type of grief is also there when in the, I think it's the first canto, probably maybe about chapter 17 or 18, maybe a little bit earlier than that, when Yudhisthira had sent Arjuna to Dwarka to find out from Kṛṣṇa what his next plan of action was. And some time had passed and he didn't come back. And so Yudhisthira was starting to reflect on that, thinking, well, what's going on here? You know, it's like, and then he started to perceive all these inauspicious omens. And he was discussing with Bhima, and he's saying, you know, I'm seeing, you know, there's all these different inauspicious omens going on, and like, you know, even like, you know, auspicious animals are walking on the left side, and inauspicious animals are on my right side, and, you know, my body, my face is twitching, and all these different types of things, and, you know, people are arguing over the smallest of things. He says, is this indicating that what Narada Muni has said has come to pass, that Kṛṣṇa is leaving? And then, as he was discussing this with Bhima, then Arjuna came back, and he saw that Arjuna's dejection was just, he had no word for it. He had no understanding of how dejected he was. And so, you know, that description that's there in the first canto, it can give us an idea of what Uddhava was experiencing. You know, he must have been feeling such separation, but as I was saying before, I just don't think that I could personally conceive of that separation, because I've never had that, at least knowingly had that experience of that relationship with Kṛṣṇa, of feeling, you know, because of lack of purity, of that feeling that one has when they have a pure heart. That feeling of love, of complete attachment, of complete dependency upon Kṛṣṇa. Because in this material world, mostly, you know, we depend upon ourselves. We're thinking that we're the doer, we're the ones who, you know, every success I have in life is due to my ability. And actually, you know, we find that many of, actually Prabhupada said in the material world, practically speaking, everyone's a demon. You know, because we find we have this demoniac mentality that, you know, that I'm the controller, I'm powerful, I'm happy, by my ability I can achieve so much. You know, these ones are my enemies, I'll get rid of them. You know, so we all, to some extent, most of us have these types of mentalities. So, because of these mentalities, it is not possible to have this complete dependence upon Kṛṣṇa, because we're trying to be the controller, we're trying to be the enjoyer. And it's almost like a separatist, actually, I think Kapila Dev talks about it in the third canto as a separatist mentality. How you know, the living entity has this separatist mentality. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sums up this separatist mentality very nicely. I can't remember the whole title of the book, but it's called Bhagavat. Actually, Merle was going to lend a book to me so I could read it. Bhagavat's something, theology and something like that. And in this book he said, the party spirit, this is the great enemy of truth. Because as long as we have this separatist mentality, we cannot actually understand the absolute truth, because we're always thinking in terms of ourselves. But we see with these great devotees, you know, and particularly in this case with Uddhava, he had no thought of anything except how to serve and how to please Kṛṣṇa. And this is the process of bhakti that Srila Prabhupada has so mercifully given us, is this process of surrendering ourselves completely to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and giving up this separatist mentality. And we see that, all throughout the Bhagavatam, there's so many wonderful stories in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole focus of the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's telling Arjuna, give it all up, surrender to me, I'll deliver you, don't fear. Because Arjuna, practically the most powerful warrior on the planet, apart from, like Bhishma and a few others, but so powerful, such a great bowman. It's like, in Draupadi's Swayamvar, they had this thing, this wheel spinning up in the air, and there's a fish there. And he's looking at the water down here, and he pierces the eye of the fish through the spokes of the spinning wheel. I mean, incredible archer. And his focus was extraordinary. Yet, still, he had this notion that, initially he wasn't going to fight. To start off, he was going to fight and he was going to kill them all. But then when he got on the battle of Kurukshetra, in the battlefield, and Krishna, he said, Pramukataha, he took him right in front of Bhishma and Drona, because he knew the love he felt for them, and he knew that this would, disturb him. And then he decided he was going to give up fighting. So he's trying to be the controller throughout this situation. And then Krishna brings him to the point of complete surrender. And then finally he says, I'll just do what you say. And this is what our acharyas are guiding us to do. This is what the scriptures are guiding us to do. Give up all this stuff in the material world. And when we get to the 11th canto, you'll see Krishna is explaining to Uddhava. This whole Uddhava Gita is about giving up attachments and surrendering to Krishna. And he goes into a lot of detail. And so by following not only, he doesn't just say to do it, because we find the last two chapters are Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So in Jnana Yoga, he says, oh no, this is too difficult, I can't do this. Then he gives him Bhakti Yoga. And Krishna does the same thing in the Bhagavad Gita. And you'll see Bhagavad Gita and the Uddhava Gita, there's a lot of similarities between the two and the way that Krishna unfolds the instructions. But in the Uddhava Gita, there's a lot more detail. And so it's a wonderful pastime, and through trying to apply ourselves to the process of devotional service in the way these great souls have done, and begging for their mercy that we can apply ourselves in this process, we too can achieve the same goal, without a doubt. Because as it says, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhakama, this love for Krishna eternally resides within the heart. It's not something you get from somewhere else. It's already there. But the process of bhakti brings it out. And this is why these stories are so important for us. I just wanted to touch on one other point. Yesterday in the Bhagavatam class, Rameshwar asked a very nice question. And I was looking in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the 21st chapter of the Madhya Lila. Lord Chaitanya gives the perfect answer. And it was like, I still don't understand the answer. Honestly, I don't understand the answer, but I'll repeat it. I think it's verse 78. And what happened is all the Brahmas and all the Shivas and Indras from all over the multiple universes came there. Billions and billions, because in the Purport, Prabhupada's describing, actually no, Krishna describes to Brahma that there's universes where Brahmas have billions of heads, because these universes are billions of yojanas across. And our universe is the smallest universe because he's only got 4 heads. Yeah? And then at one point, all the Brahmas, they bowed down to the Lord, and all their crowns, they've got jewels on them, and their jewels are all tinkling. And this is like the prayers of the Vedas. Yeah? And then they all bow down to Krishna, and they say, I can't remember, Ama I Brahmanda. So Ama, we know in Bengal means my. Brahmanda, universe. So they think, I'm so fortunate you are in my universe. So they're coming to Krishna in Dwarka in this universe, and somehow or other by Krishna's mystic potency, they're still in their universes in the spiritual world. They come to the spiritual world. So from that, I got a little bit of an understanding that Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's Dham are not bound by time and space. Because you can see that there's billions of universes, and as we know, Krishna's pastimes are going on, like his childhood pastimes are going on somewhere, He's breaking the butter pots going on in some universe, killing the different demons that are going on in different universes. But there are universes where Krishna's not there right now, because there's billions of universes. And he cycles through, because in the 20th chapter of the Madhya, it mentions how it says Kṛṣṇa-dvaipāyana. He just goes from one universe to the next, the next, the next, the next, like that. So there's universes where he's not there right now. So in the form of Krishna. So that then caused me to wonder, well, what kind of mystic potency is going on there, where he's bringing Brahmas from is he bringing Brahmas from past and future into that pastime? It's inconceivable. It's just inconceivable. I can't understand these things. I'm not smart enough for that. But that's the answer. I mean, that's what Lord Krishna himself said to, what Lord Chaitanya was explaining to Sanatana Goswami. And you can't get a better answer than that. Yeah. Any comments or questions at all? I just thought I'd share that because I was just blown away when I read that one.
I think although Srila Prabhupada touches on this in the purport, it's still astounding that Maitreya was a great devotee, but not yet a completely unalloyed, pure devotee, and yet he's seeing Krishna. Extraordinary to try to understand how that could be.
But even Duryodhana was seeing Krishna.
Okay, so when Krishna pretended to be a human, devotees and non-devotees all saw him, but from a different angle of vision. Yeah. So that was Krishna Lila.
It reminds me of those Japanese rock gardens? They have these rock gardens in Japan. I've seen photos of them, never seen them directly. But my understanding of these rock gardens, wherever you stand, you can't see everything. And so it's the same with Krishna's pastimes. Well, this is my understanding. It's the same with Krishna's pastimes. Whatever our perspective, we'll never understand them. We can understand partially some aspect of it, but it's all about what's being revealed to us. There's no power in the world that we could develop which will give us the capacity to understand everything about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. Because even he himself cannot understand everything about himself. Yeah? Anantashesh, it's described how Anantashesh, he's got unlimited hoods, and he cannot repeat all Krishna's pastimes. He's eternally repeating Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's glories. So for us to understand these things, it's just inconceivable. We can't understand. Yes, Guru Prabhu.
Thank you for the class. You were mentioning, quoting Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur about the separatist mentality?
No, that was...
or Bhagavatam?
That was Kapila Dev.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned how the party spirit is the great enemy of the absolute...
That's from Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Of the absolute truth, correct.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could say something about what is that party spirit? Is that party spirit personal ambition? We know, for example, Chandravali and Srimati Radharani, they have their different parties, but that's completely transcendental.
Yeah, yeah.
But how do we know if we're being affected by the party spirit?
Again, my understanding of it, which is limited, is like essentially if it's centered around me, that's party spirit. Anything that's not centered around Krishna is, in a sense, party spirit, because, it's just like, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he goes on to describe, I'm reading this, the Seventh Goswami again, and I'm just astounded at the personality that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is. He's incredible. And so he goes on to explain how if we think that my religion is the best religion, my scriptures are the best scriptures, he said, this is party spirit. So even we may be engaged in a bona fide religious practice, if we're thinking my understanding is the best, or if we're thinking my practice is, or my religion is the best, he said, we'll never understand the absolute truth. And then he goes on to an explanation which was, for me, was just amazing. He takes the 5 rasas And he equates them with the statement by Jesus Christ, to love the Father with all their heart, all their soul, all the body, I can't remember the whole statement, but he directly translates the first statement as Shantaras, then Dasharas, then Sakyaras, then Vatsalyaras, and finally goes on to Madhuryaras. And this is the point I got from this. So he was saying, it's like, not only do we have to see how our religion is delivering the highest truth, but also see it in other religions, how other religions are also delivering the highest truth, if the practitioner practices properly. Because all these religions ultimately come from God. Bona fide religions, not concocted religions, but all these bona fide religions ultimately are passed back to God. And this is one of the things that was really interesting about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, because he did dabble in impersonalism and Mayavadi philosophy. He found it very distasteful. But he identified himself in his early years as a Christian in some ways. And so he had that experience, he had that knowledge of Christianity, and he found a lot of, I can't remember the exact terminology he used, but he found a lot of purity in the Christian tradition, in the Christian faith. But it didn't answer all the questions for him. When he read the Chaitanya Charitamrita for the second time, that just like completely transformed him. So, yeah, very extraordinary, how he's able to synthesize different faiths and be able to present it from the perspective of pure bhakti. Yes, Maharshi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Today is Sri Advaitacharya Appearance Day. Can you please tell us some of his glories? Thank you.
Yeah. I did read a little bit about Advaitacharya this morning. I mean, Advaitacharya was quite an interesting personality. I mean, there's a few, amazing stories in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm sure Rameshwar Prabhu would know many more stories than me. And of course all the senior devotees here would know many more stories than I do. But he used to go out door to door preaching with Nityananda Prabhu. And of course, as we know, Nityananda Prabhu is Prabhupada would say, quite a controversial character. He would do all sorts of strange things. And Advaitacharya was always worried that, Nityananda with his antics was going to kill him or get him into some trouble. And then one time, just on a different story, where they were sitting at the house, I can't remember whose house it was, they were taking prasadam. Because sometimes in our devotional service, especially with our close relationships, we get a little bit too formal, I feel. But we can see, with these great souls, that there's kind of a rust between them, which is playful, and they sort of, sometimes give each other a little bit of sauce, and so Nityananda he was criticized. Actually, it was at the house of Advaitacharya. He's criticizing Advaitacharya. It's like, I was hoping to break my fast today, and then Advaitacharya, because he's eating mountains of prasadam. He said, I was hoping to break my fast today. And then Advaitacharya, and he says, my religious principles are ruined. You're a reject Paramahansa. So he's just like criticizing him like anything. But, we see like sometimes, in our close friendships, we do that. We bag each other. We sort of give each other, a bit of grief. But it's a loving, expression. It's not like we're sort of criticizing. But then Advaitacharya is understood to be Mahavishnu or Sadashiva. And from him, the spiritual and material worlds, he's the one through whom the spiritual and material worlds expand. I just didn't have time. The sixth canto, the sixth chapter of the Adi Leela, because I think, like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first 14 verses basically are giving the whole of the Adi Leela. And there's 2 verses there that describe Advaitacharya, and so the 6th chapter of the Adi Leela is basically describing more of the philosophical side of who Advaitacharya is. But it is very, nice reading. But yeah, so I encourage you to read that. Anyone would like to share some of the glories of Advaita Acharya? I mean, there's so many. I mean, because he's Advaita, he's unlimited, so you could speak for days on his glories. Yes, Vyāsadeva Prabhu.
Sorry, not Advaita Acharya, but the previous point about the party spirit. I'm glad it was brought down, because I find that to be an important topic, party spirit. And I remember a few conversations I've had with devotees about this, that we think we're the best religion. So my question was, but you know, this is typical of sectarian religion, that the practitioners, they think they are the best. So how is that making us different than them? You know, just like them, we think we're the best.
Yeah.
And so no, the punchline is that their answer typically would be, yeah, but the difference is that in our case, we're right and they're wrong. Is that,
yeah,
would you say this is the ultimate party spirit?
Yeah. But everyone says that when they're coming from the platform of false ego. Because that's driven by the false ego. It's nothing to do with the religion, it's me. It's the best because I practice it. Not I'm practicing it because it's the best, but it's the best because I'm practicing it. And we see, especially in our earlier stages of devotional service, and hopefully it doesn't last too long, hopefully we kind of are able to move through this, but you know, people are promoting their guru, they're promoting their temple, like, you know, I mean, I travel to a lot of temples, and every temple I go to, practically speaking, their deities are the best and their deity worship's the best. Yeah? It's a common thing. But I mean, I don't burst their bubble, but you know, it's just a common thing. And so,
it's nice. Because, it's okay, it's legitimate, why not?
Yeah, but because we're egocentric. You know, and that's, we see with this wonderful example of Uddhava, and all those personalities I mentioned, they're Krishna-centric. That they're always looking at how to satisfy Krishna, not put themselves in the center and think, you know, I'm the best devotee, my religion is the best, my scriptures are the best. It's all my. But they're just simply looking how to satisfy Krishna. But also we see, and the example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur that I gave, I think it's a really good example for us, because he was able to see the benefit or the good in other religions, and also use that in his service to Krishna. And I think for us that's the same thing, is we need to see the good in everything, and see what, you know, just like if you look in the 11th canto, I can't remember the section, it might be the Avanti Brahma, but I can't remember. There's stories there about all, actually I think it was the Navi, was it Navi? Anyhow, I'd just be wrong if I tried to identify it. But it talks about how, you know, the sage, he was trying to be like the bumblebee, he was trying to be like the python, he was trying to be like, you know, he was seeing the quality of how the bumblebee was always going around and getting the nectar. And he was seeing the quality of the python, he was seeing the, you know, all these different things in the material world, and learning from them. So only someone who's humble can do that. My grandfather used to tell me, is the man who thinks he knows everything will never learn anything. So if we think we've got the perfect religion, if we think we've got the perfect scriptures, it is, we get that, but we shouldn't be me-centric on it, or egocentric on it, but just understand that I can learn from anything. I can learn from anyone. Even like, you know, just like a non-devotee, we can learn things from non-devotees. I mean, sometimes you see that people who aren't devotees of Krishna have got qualities that are actually quite admirable. The only problem is they're not using those qualities in Krishna's service. Therefore, as the Bhagavatam says, is harava bhakta shakuto mahadukara. They're not good qualities because they're not connected. The only good qualities can be connected to Krishna, but we can take these things in the material world and connect them to Krishna, and then they become wonderful. And that's why these personalities are glorious, because everything in their existence is connected to Krishna. And we're starting to do that. We're starting to connect everything to Krishna. But until we get to the point of connecting everything to Krishna, we're going to have a separatist spirit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It says that Kṛṣṇa-dvaipāyana is Pancharatrika Ashraya Vigraha, the shelter of deity worship. And we don't see him doing too much of a deity worship in his pastimes, but of course he was doing some. Could you please comment on how he is Pancharatrika Ashraya Vigraha?
Actually, someone sent me that quote this morning, I think. I didn't read it all. I was just, I only slept about 3 hours last night, so I'm not so conscious. I think they sent me that quote. I mean, honestly speaking, I'm not, when it comes to deity worship, I just know the right devotees to ask questions from. I'm not that knowledgeable. It's actually about Gauranga, not Advaita. Yeah, I was saying Pancharatrika. Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand that much. I think you probably know more about it than me. But because Mahavishnu means, yeah, I don't know. I don't understand that. But I just, the Prabhupada describes 2.3.22. He gives a whole list of different deities that people can worship. And he's talking about obviously Radha Krishna, Gaurnitai, Krishna Balaram, he talks about Lakshmi Narayan, Varaha, so many different. So the essence of deity worship is like, I mean, of course, Prabhupada for ISKCON temples, he gave 3 main deities. He gave Gaurnitai, Jagannath Subhadra, and Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna being Ishtadevata of the Gaudiyas. But then we see that different devotees are attracted to different deities, depending on their nature. And it's the same, it's like, you'll see the different rasas, people will manifest as they become purified, different rasas are going to manifest. So a lot of it depends on the nature of the jiva and their individual attraction. But, no, I don't really understand that so well. Maybe in a few more lifetimes I'll understand a bit more deeply. But Advaita Acharya, he's the shelter for, it mentions this in the introduction, or the summary of the 6th chapter of the Adi Leela, how he's the shelter for the spirit, for the spiritual realm, but he's also the shelter for the material realm. And deity worship, as we experience, is manifested here in the material realm. And so in that sense, because he's the shelter of the creation. So, but yeah, I mean, the connection I'm not completely sure of. It's such a deep philosophy, and I've only got a very small brain. But as I become more and more purified, then I'll understand more. Anything else? Yes, Maharaji. Might need the microphone.
Thank you. On this topic of party spirit, I want to share about Srila Prabhupada's visit to the Franciscan monastery, and on being told of the philosophy of Saint Francis of Assisi, he said, "Oh, very God conscious." And after his visit, one of the Franciscan monks was in tears because he could see Prabhupada's mercy, his compassion, and his love.
Yeah.
So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, St. Francis of Assisi was an extraordinary devotee. I mean, if you read his life, and there's so many. I have a friend in Australia who regularly sort of sends me links. There's one called Saint Therese, and I read a bit about her, and she was like really extraordinary.
Saint
So you'll
Therese
find
of
in
Avila.
all different traditions there are people who have perfected themselves through that religion. So it's not, it's not that only on the bhakti path you'll find pure unalloyed devotees. In all the paths you'll find pure unalloyed devotees, if they apply themselves
It is the bhakti path, but it is the bhakti path,
It's
but
got a
it is
different name.
Christian or Muslim or whatever their path is, as long as they're practicing the tenets of their faith, they can also attain pure love of God.
One of the challenges, though, with many of these practitioners, as I understand it, is that the path has become somewhat corrupted, so it's very hard for them to find the path. This is why we're so fortunate, is because our path also became corrupted. Lord Chaitanya came and re-established it, and then we see that even before Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the owls, the bowels, all these types of persons, the Atibaris, they all became quite prominent. And so even most of Vaishnava scriptures, he had to look for years to find a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It wasn't there. And versions of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam had become corrupted. So by the diligent efforts of our acharyas, we have the uncorrupted, even Prabhupada, he said in his Bhagavad Gita, there's 700 versions of Bhagavad Gita. He was asked to recommend a version of Bhagavad Gita, he said he couldn't recommend one, even though there's 700 versions available, because they become corrupted by the commentator's personal agenda, by their separatist agenda. So we're very fortunate that we have, the acharyas have been very careful to, it's just like that analogy is given with the mango fruit. They've been very carefully passed the mango fruit down the tree, and they're handing it to us and saying, here, take it. So that's why this path is unique, as far as I understand. Okay. Yeah?
So just to say that there's a description in the biography of Santa Teresa from Avila. Hare Krishna, thank you. There is a description of, on the biography of Santa Teresa of Avila, that she had a darshan also, actually, of the spiritual world. Yeah, she has a mystic vision in Seville, in Spain.
And St. Francis, I can't remember all the names of these different personalities, but I've read quite a few biographies of them. They're just extraordinary. I can only hope to get that kind of realization.
The classic by St. Teresa of Avila is the 7 mentions, and it describes the gradation of devotion, all the way up to something that is very akin to Madhurya Rasa.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I had it read by a few devotees who couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur does make that connection between the statements of Jesus Christ and the 5 rasas. And he's saying how Jesus Christ is teaching us teaching the 5 rasas. So we can, if we have humility, we can learn from anyone. And that's one of the messages of our acharyas. Trinada Pisa Nichena, then we'll be able to develop love of Godhead. But if we don't have humility, we're not going to go very far. Thank you all very much for patiently listening. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Bol.